There it is. What is happening, party people? Welcome in to another episode and conversation. Shout out to everybody on TikTok. Jamie, I see you. How you living? Good to see you. Glad you are doing well. Shout out to everybody in the YouTube, Instagram chats as well. Good to see you. If you're new, all right, my name is Coach Sean. I'm a faith based relationship coach, and I've helped hundreds build healthier, happier, and whole relationships with themselves, with God, and with others while building security that lasts beyond marriage. Okay. And we're picking up in this particular video, replay, stream, live, picking back up on our conversation from yesterday. All right. Because we spent quite a bit of time talking about red, yellow, and green flags on dating apps. And, the conversation got good. We only got to three red flags due to some questions that were flooding in as we were discussing them. And so we're actually going to spend this time kind of just fleshing out the rest of what we would consider red, yellow, and green flags, and then give you some takeaways, all right, that you can move forward with to apply in your dating experiences. Welcome back to another episode of the Dating App Dilemma, all right, where we are just in a series discussing and diving through how to maneuver through dating apps in a healthy way and in a secure manner. Okay, this is not to convince you or persuade you to use dating apps. However, this is a space to open up the conversation with safety on all things related to dating apps. Okay, because believe it or not, we're in a culture where people are dating online. Online dating is a new thing, not just a new thing, it's a popular thing. It's an easier thing, lower barrier of entry, and an opportunity for you to grow in your discernment, whether this is your first time dating, you've been dating for a while and you're trying something different, trying something new, you're hopping back on dating apps for the first time in a long time, or you're not even anywhere near dating apps, but you just want to know how to date healthily. All the things that we're talking about here are things that we can talk about and apply anywhere else in our relationships. And I want you to just come in with an open mind and curiosity as we navigate this conversation. All right. And so far we've just covered a lot in regards to foundations in this conversation, and everything pertaining to statistics, numbers. What is the reality that people are experiencing using dating apps? Okay. Obviously you have your own experiences. You have things that you've seen, things that you've went through. So have others, right? Who have come about on social media, who have been real loud and proud about the things that they've seen and experienced. But I want you to be able to make a confident decision for yourself on whether or not dating apps is something you want to be a part of. But more importantly, if dating in this season is something that you want to gain the most from in terms of finding the right person that you're wanting to do life with. Okay. So I'm excited for this conversation. We're going to dive right into it. Before we do, all right, again, I want to shout out everybody on TikTok. I want to shout out everybody on Instagram. I want to shout out everybody on YouTube watching the replay or watching this live. Okay. If you want to catch the replay because you missed the time live, or you just want to be able to watch it again to get some notes and all the things, be sure to go over to my YouTube. Coach Sean Walker handles the same. All right. So you're able to get what you need there. Also, your boy has all of this designed in the format of a secure program, okay, designed to get you from anxious or avoidant attachment to secure attachment in a healthy way without you having to wait for your knight in shining armor, wait to get married, wait to have a relationship, wait for money to get right, wait for different statuses and locations in life to feel okay to becoming secure. Okay, you can start doing that today. You can start doing that intentionally, and you have a first week of it on trial for free for you to put it to the test. Many people have gotten a lot of wins from the first week alone. I know you will too. It is very applicable, very tangible, and something that you're going to gain a lot of wins from. Okay, so be sure to send me a message over on my socials, okay, with the keyword secure if you are interested in joining on that. Okay, whether that's through Instagram, that's through TikTok, so on and so forth. So that way you can get a part of that. There's a community, a sisterhood, or for the fellas, a brotherhood that is waiting for you to support you through this journey. Okay. And then, of course, all other things in relation to programs and opportunities for you to continue to do the intentional healing work. Same keyword, and you'll have an automated message that'll pop up specifically on TikTok that'll guide you through what you're looking for and what you need. All things pertain to relationships. All right. And then, of course, for YouTube, be sure to click the link in the description below, the becoming-secure.com. That's where you can get your free relational diagnostic, your free attachment style quiz. I really, really want you to get that free relational diagnostic, 'cause that's going to get you the best steps forward into all things related to what you need, and what are the next steps for you to become the healthiest version of you, to date healthily, and to obviously have the healthiest, secure relationship you can possibly create. Okay. All right. With all that being said, all right, new content's being uploaded, all the things. Please turn on your post notifications so you know when I'm posting, going live, all the things. Let's dive into this conversation because I'm excited. All right. And there's some things that we left off on yesterday that we're going to pick back up on today and just keep building from there. Okay. But I do have to remind you as we're diving through this conversation, again, always go check out the previous replays so that way you know where we're coming from, the foundation we've laid. We've talked about a lot of things in regards to dating and dating apps. All right. We've talked about the psychology of men and women while dating. We've talked about the biggest one of the bigger questions, the 5 objections to using dating apps. Okay, 5 to 7 most common objections, rather. Okay, obviously there's more, but that's a really good conversation you want to check out. Also, all right, you also want to check out for those of you who are Christians, who are believers. You're like, yo, should we even use dating apps? We have a conversation centered on that as well. And then, of course, just even uh, what was another conversation that we had? I mean, we've had so many so far. It's this. This is literally the 12th installment and a part two to yesterday's conversation. And so again, they're all up there. They're all posted with all the proper titles. So be sure to check it out. All right, even to the point of now moving into applications, which is where we're at now. Okay, when it comes to using dating apps and using them healthily and getting the most out of them. Okay, that all starts with a strategy. All starts with intentionality, and more importantly, starts with a healthier version of you, so you can navigate through these things in the healthiest of ways. Okay. And so I'm really excited, and we're gonna set the groundwork. We're gonna remind ourselves of the groundwork that we set for this conversation yesterday as we step further into today. Okay, because yesterday we kind of gave 4 main necessities. Okay, that we have to carry if we're going to use dating apps and we're going to use them in some kind of way to be able to engage healthily, create healthy relationships, and obviously remain secure as we're looking for the right person to date. Okay, the first thing that we want to experience, okay, is our values. Okay, we talked about these, okay, yesterday, just as a quick reminder. Your values, all right, not defined by me, but defined by my good friend and coach, Dr. Zeb, who says your values, in a custom definition, is your attitudes, principles, perspectives, beliefs that govern your life among the world around you. Okay, your attitudes, principles, perspectives, beliefs that govern your life among the world around you. Wavy, stick to the end. Any life tips, advice for me, sir? I just turned 18 years old. Yeah, man. Well, I can just go ahead and give it. Appreciate you for commenting that in the TikTok chat. I guess as a brief intermission to this conversation. Yeah, man. I think being 18, I think you are in such a unique time of life, and I think one of the best things I could give you, because it was given to me, and it took me some time to get it, but I finally got it after a while. Is be in the present, man. Be where you are. Okay, be where you are. I remember being 18, obviously feeling like I had so many ways to go. I had so many directions. I had so many options. Life was just feeling like, oh my goodness, like now there's just so many things that we can do. I went from high school straight into college. Okay, after that summer, and really just feeling like I'm on top of a lot of different directions. For me personally, I was pursuing basketball at the time, and things that just slowly weren't working out that I had to adjust and had to build through. Appreciate you, Surreal. Yes, sir. Shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's now in Miami Heat, so I might have to grab that jersey. But yeah, I remember being 18, and I definitely think being at that age, you can almost feel like you can do no wrong. Life is at the palm of your hands. Or for a lot of you, man, I need to hurry up and figure out what to do. That's probably one of the biggest things. Between 18 to roughly 23, 24 years old, there's just a heightened sense of anxiety, depression, sadness. That's not to say that has to be your story. However, we do know the numbers are real. And a lot of times it's because of what we're in front of every day. Social media, seeing people win, all the successes, and thinking that if we don't get there in a certain amount of time, that we're behind, that we're losing in life, that we're failing in life. And I just want to be a voice of encouragement to you to be in the present, man. Be where you are. Slow down, take your time, and be where you are in all areas and phases of your life. Okay. There is no time clock that you need to be rushing to complete. There is no finish line you need to hurry to. And more importantly, the expectations and timetables that you are placing on yourself, or that you are listening to others and wanting to be, apply to yourself, God oftentimes is not applying to you. Okay. God is not concerned. God is not worried. And more importantly, God doesn't really carry the same expectations that maybe your family, friends, or other people around you are creating for you as opposed to where you should be by a certain age and a certain time. I just encourage you to be in the present and find the value in where you are. Okay, move with gratitude, focus more on the abundance around you rather than lack, and continue to build on skills. Okay, but continue to build on skills and growing in those things, whether that's something that's tech related, if that's going to school, whatever it is, man. Engage in building on skills because skills will pay the bills. Skills is something that you're in a great time, not in a hurry, not in a rush, but you're willing to develop. And try new things, man. You're in a season of life where you have an opportunity to try things, to do things, without maybe too many fear of repercussions of failing. Okay. It sounds like you don't maybe have a lot of responsibilities outside of, maybe where you're going to go to school or all the things. So I just encourage you to be in the present, man. Value where you are and take your time, one day at a time. And I think that's a good start. Let me know if that makes sense. I appreciate you asking that. And stick around. Hit the follow button, man. There's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about over on this channel that I think could be really, really helpful, man, for you to navigate through that. So as you have other questions, feel free. I am taking clients. Yes, Chanel Ali. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Yes, I am taking clients. Just send me a secure message through the DMs. You'll go through a litany test of automated questions that you'll be able to answer that'll kind of qualify what your next steps are as part of becoming a client and us working together to get you what you need. Okay. So be sure to do that. My current clients right now, man, they kind of fluctuate. Right now, I'm currently at, trying to count in my head here. I want to say about, I want to say 5 to 7 active clients right now. That's not how, I mean, that's just in this season. Okay. I think it's 5 to 7 active clients right now. So like I said, my books are open for all things related to that. Okay. So be sure to send a message there. And also, you can also check out my story, my TikTok page. I have a story that is testimonials. Okay. I mean, there's more to come, but just what I have uploaded currently of testimonials of people that I've worked with and that I have helped. Okay. In various different directions in their lives. Okay. Worked with full time artists. I mean, I don't know what you define. I mean, when you say artists, I guess you should define that. But again, send me a message, man. Let's talk. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to still connect and do some work because I mean it spans to anybody and everybody. Okay, so we were laying down the groundworks of this conversation, okay, and we were talking about the 4 necessities, right, to determine red flags, yellow flags, and green flags in dating apps. Okay. Obviously, what we'll talk about in this conversation and expand upon, these are not limited to. All right. However, these are some flags that we can pay attention to actually gain momentum in dating healthily. Okay. But in order to determine these flags that we love to either point out so fast or we maybe ignore so quickly, is based on these 4 things. Okay, your values. Okay, we were just defining that not by myself, but by my good friend and coach Dr. Zeb, who says values are attitudes, principles, perspectives, beliefs that govern your life among the world around you. Okay, and so obviously when you think about your values, we're thinking about more so your core values. Okay, your core values. So yes, you might think I value family, I value family time, I value work, I value friends, I value Jesus, all these things. Okay, great. But I think when you get to the deeper core of these things by asking why to each value you might list, this is going to let us know more of a core value that lays beneath. Okay. For example, when you ask why to family time, that's not necessarily to immediate family, but to people you consider family, you might be thinking more of like quality time, right? You might be thinking more of, yes, quality time, closeness. Okay. Enjoying one another's time and presence. Okay. Maybe there's fun activity, something that you associate with that group that you find something that you just value and enjoy. Okay. That's something that you want to experience more of in your relationships. Safety. Okay. Things like that. Right. So on and so forth. All right. Just, I want you to peel that onion back and I want you to start with at least 5 to 7. We're not asking for a long list of values, but 5 to 7 is a good number. Okay. And then, of course, as you continue to learn more of what you value, you'll add to that list. And before we start expecting other people to live up to these values, you do have to do the honest work and ask yourself, are you living up to those values? Right? Because as long as you're living up to those values, then it doesn't make it that much impossible to attract somebody else who is living those values as well. Okay. So your values are important. And then, of course, with values comes alignment. Okay. Another definition given by Dr. Zeb, he says alignments are when your words, thoughts, and actions all are on the same page or they agree. Okay. So when you're in alignment, what you say, what you do, and what you believe come together. Okay. So, in other words, you shouldn't say that you believe peace is required in relationships and that a deal breaker for you is when there's no peace and yet keep chasing after exes who do nothing but bring chaos into your life. Okay. Like, we have to be able to be in alignment with these things, and that's just one example of many. Okay, when we're moving in alignment, this is less about making perfect decisions, moving in perfectionism, or making a right decision 10 out of 10 times. It's much more about making decisions aligned with your values. Your true values are things that come into agreement with your behaviors, thoughts, and words, right? So, of course, if you say you value one thing, but you really do something different than that thing you say you value, you do have to be honest and say, well, is this even, or just stay curious, is this even something I truly value? Okay, is this something that I truly, genuinely value? Or is this something that I'm trying to build to become a value and a legitimate value in my life? All right. And obviously, there's some deeper conversations to go in there, but this is just to set up this conversation. Okay. So we said values, we said alignment. We also said capacity. Okay. Capacity is big. Capacity defined, okay, is just the measurement to which you can withstand or withhold something. Okay. The measurement to which you're able to withstand or withhold something. All right. And so when we're talking about capacity, we're just asking how much room do you legitimately have, not just to date, but to engage with this type of person, with where they're going, with who they are, with their interests, with what they want to do with their life. Does it cause you to have to abandon where you're going, who you are, in order to make room for what is happening with this specific person? Okay. Had a great conversation with someone yesterday, and they brought up a really great example on how, okay, for example, if you're someone who is a farmer, right, and you're engaged with somebody who's more of a city type of individual, okay, cool, that can work, okay, opposites can attract. And if you find yourself looking at that and saying, well, I don't see myself living a life on a farm, having a ranch, that's not really my big goal when having a home, having my own family, and things of that sort, you want to stay as far away from that as possible, then it probably doesn't make sense for you to engage in a long term relationship with somebody who only desires to have that as part of their envision of a relationship. Doesn't make them a bad person. But again, it's just maybe that's not something that I genuinely have capacity for, or I'm willing to create capacity for. Okay. When we talk about capacity, it's basically from these two angles: condition, by it's either by conditioning or by choice. Okay. So when we talk about, capacity from the angle of capacity, or capacity from the angle of conditioning, this is just simply saying that we actually, like, we physically, mentally, maybe even emotionally, are unable to do said activity. Okay. When you think of conditioning, think of like somebody who is sick or maybe has an illness, right? Maybe they don't have the capacity to go to the gym. Okay. They don't feel good. Their bodies are not in a prime condition for them to go lift weights. Okay. Or for them to go on a run, for them to go do something active wise with their bodies. Okay. That's conditioning, right? Whereas capacity by choice is just simply saying this isn't something I'm interested in, nor am I willing or ready to invest in. That's a different conversation. There's a difference between somebody who cannot go to the gym because of a physical ailment and somebody who doesn't want to go to the gym because they simply just want to sit down, lay around, pray for a beautiful body, but doesn't want to put the work in. Okay. That is a whole different conversation. And so when we talk about alignment or capacity by condition or choice, this is something first and foremost we need to always reflect on for ourselves. But also when we engage with other people, look at that as feedback. Okay. Because truth is, a lot of people who don't maybe want to date you aren't your cup of tea. You're not their cup of tea. They aren't your cup of tea. Oftentimes it's not because they're a manipulator, gaslighter, and all these things that they said no to you. Truth is, they do have the capacity. It's just not for you because they don't want you. Okay. And like that does feel like, oh, wow, like that. You didn't have to punch me in the chest like that, coach. But this is something that we do have to be honest about so that we can let go of this fear of rejection that clouds over us or that stunts our growth from being able to indulge in dating in the healthiest of ways with the intention of finding the right person. Okay. Not everybody's going to say yes, just like you're not going to say yes to everybody. You're not everybody's cup of tea, just like everybody isn't your cup of tea. Okay. So we acknowledge that and we don't take that personally. Okay. And that's all based on capacity. Some people don't have capacity because they legitimately aren't conditioned to hold said expectations. And there are some people who don't have capacity because they simply choose not to be able to have that capacity because they don't want to. And there's only something, if there's one thing you can control, it's what you can control, not what other people do, not what other people choose and all the different things like that. Okay. So we have capacity, we have values, we have alignment. Okay. And then fourth and finally, we just have honesty. Honesty, right? This is something that we set up from last conversation. Honesty about who you are, where you are, and what you're doing at any given moment. Dating is a lot easier if you're just simply honest about where you are, what you're doing, who you are, and more importantly, what you're looking for. Okay. There's no reason why we should be out here lying to people that we don't know out of people pleasing tendencies, acting as if we want something with them when in reality, we just like the attention. There's absolutely no reason we should be delaying the inevitable of telling somebody no because we are so caught up in people pleasing. We would rather you get this picture and vision of us of liking us than to hurt your feelings by telling you we are not interested in you. So, like, done are the days where we're just simply lying to ourselves, right? And we're lying to other people, convincing ourselves that we like them when we don't. We want this relationship when we don't. We want this setup when we don't. Okay. And that's not just towards liking somebody, but that's also towards every other aspect of our lives, living in full transparency and honesty. Okay. Be honest about where you are, who you are, and what you're doing. Because when we're honest about that, we also have to face the truth about what we have capacity for. We also have to face the truth about what makes sense for us. We also have to face the truth about dating on our level. There are a lot of you who struggle with dating because you don't date on your level. You're chasing Instagram models, and yet you don't even put yourself in presentation and physique or opportunity, and to actually attract this person that you just so desperately want to have in your life, all because of how good she looks, not even knowing who she is. Okay, great question. Hood Insight says, how do you know your level? We're going to have a conversation on that as we dive deeper into this conversation because the flags are going to be very telling of where we are on our level. Okay, but one of the things that you can do before we step into that to know where you are on your level is genuinely asking yourself, where do I rank myself on a scale of 1 to 10 mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? Let's just start with those three. Okay. And I don't mean mentally, emotionally, spiritually from the easy questions like, okay, spirituality is a 10 out of 10 because I go to church every Sunday, because I know my pastor's name and family, because I tithe every week, right? Because I know the songs and I know the sermons, right? When we're talking about measuring spirituality, okay, how do I deal with stillness and silence? What's my relationship to that, right? Am I quicker to abandon moments of silence and fill that gap with noise? Or am I someone who is comfortable with that to the point where I'm comfortable in my own environment, in my own setting, and not needing to be out everywhere, doing everything, or hearing everything else to drown out what I don't want to face inwardly? That's a great question. Okay. When we're talking about spirituality, all right, we're talking about things like awareness. We're talking about things, yes, like your prayer life, all these things that play a role, yes. And there's so many other tangible practicalities that go into that. When you measure yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, mentally and emotionally, okay, we're not just talking about, well, I like to think I speak big words or I think nice thoughts, okay, or emotionally, like I'm typically a relaxed, happy person. No, no, no. We're talking about how do you handle your emotions? How do you process your emotions? How do you communicate your emotions? Okay. When you're angry and somebody tells you no, how do you respond? Right? We're talking about mental, okay, not just your view on the world, okay, but also those people that you are around that influence your view of the world. What does that look like? Okay, are you in places where you are talking to people and engaging with people who have what you want. They're married, okay, long-term relationships. Maybe there is some kind of conversation that's happening in this circle that encourages you to continue to go after what it is you say you want. Is that there? Is that present? Right? So there's so many different layers to it, and we're not actually trying to be perfect in these areas. However, sometimes we need to have a proper scaling of what that 1 to 10 looks like to honestly know where we are, because a lot of us, when we measure ourselves, especially when it comes to attractiveness, especially when it comes to healthiness in these lanes, we actually realize we aren't either as healthy as we say we are, as attractive as we say we are, or as honest as we say we are. Okay. And so these things are really good for us to engage in to know our level. Okay. It's not so much about what you have financially. It's not even to the extent of maybe what you may have physically, although we can say that even from a physical realm, you shouldn't necessarily be finding yourself chasing after somebody, or trying to have someone that is a gym rat and you're nowhere near a gym, right? Everybody is after. What I've noticed in these dating app spaces is so many people are chasing after the same type of person, and yet don't present themselves to carry the similar values required to have that type of person. So that's why everybody who looks good and looks attractive on dating apps are still single, because everybody's looking at people from a surface level, and when you come into contact with them, they have no substance. And it's like this is a wash, rinse, repeat. And so how do we deal with that? Well, we got to be honest about the level that we're on. It's kind of like riding a plane. You have first class and economy. Okay, when you're in first class, okay, you have the capacity for that first class, right? You got a ticket, and obviously because you purchased that ticket, you now get different perks as part of being first class. There are certain things you don't have to deal with in first class compared to how much somebody in economy has to deal with kids kicking in the back seat, people being loud and disturbing. You got to eat cold peanuts and Biscoff cookies for snacks on the long ride, I should say. Not to say any of that is bad necessarily. Okay, it depends on what floats your boat. Okay, but the difference between first class and economy is essentially what you can afford, is essentially what you have capacity for. Okay. And obviously, from a bigger picture, if we're trying to apply first class and economy to the way in which you live your life, first class, we're talking more of alignment. We're talking more of alignment in values. We're talking more in your consistency. Okay. Your emotional stability. Emotional thoughts are controlled. You don't have to worry about people swinging off the handles when they're angry and upset. They know how to communicate, right? There's a great sense of stability in all those different directions. But we first measure that within ourselves, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, before we expect other people to reach that, and we don't have it for ourselves. And one of the biggest common things that we see in dating is people are asking other people to come with all these different qualities and expectations, but when we get a look at your life, you don't carry any of it. And yet you get upset because now this person no longer wants to stay connected to you, continue to build with you, because you thought by being connected to somebody like that, all of a sudden it was just going to be downloaded to you without you having to do any of the work. And that's just not how it works. Right? So we do have to call those things out if we're really, really wanting to date healthily. Okay. But this conversation is going to hopefully expand on what it looks like to date on your level when you know your level. And that's measured by these flags we have in front of us. So I hope that makes sense. All right. As we're diving into that now, let's get into these red and yellow green flags. All right. And we initially started yesterday's conversation with three. All right. The first three that we talked about briefly, okay, was sexual pressure early. All right. Avoiding basic questions and inconsistent communication. Okay. So just as a quick recap, sexual pressure early, right? We're talking about all things related to sexual hints, desires expressed explicitly in bios. Okay, there's a lot of people who are a lot more bolder and louder, all right, when it comes to those things. And that if that's where they are, that's where they are. But that doesn't mean that's where you need to be. Okay, especially as people over here who are moving from a place of healed security. I do not need to feel the pressure of giving up my body to you in order to win you over. And if that is something that you are struggling with, where you feel if you hold out too long, they're not going to want to stay with you, that is something that we should look at as a mirror to heal through, okay, instead of just going with the flow and still being willing to give up your body as a means of keeping the relationship. That's called performance. That's not security. Okay. Now, can you be secure and it's not you giving up your body and all the things? That's a different conversation for another day. Okay. But specifically to those of you who feel that pressure and you say, well, I'm afraid that if I don't do this for this person, they're going to leave. So then it leads you to do it anyway. It leads you to go with it anyway. That is something that we want to stay curious about because that is sexual pressure, whether that's pressure you're creating in your head or pressure that is actually legitimately being created within the connection. And that actually doesn't seem to be something that spells healthy. Now, if that's something that you're experiencing in the moment of the connection and then you communicate it, you guys come to a mutual agreement. No, 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 no sexual pressure. None of these things have to happen. And I'm still wanting to choose you. And they back it up with actions and all the things. That's a beautiful setting. Okay. But sexual pressure early is something we want to look at and be like, okay, yeah, nah, I'm good. Okay. Somebody who is bold enough to come into their bios on dating apps and say that they're not looking for somebody with shrimp, but they're looking for somebody for like with horse tendencies. Heck no. Okay. Like that should easily be a swipe left moment for the fellas. And then obviously for the ladies, whatever that looks like from your angle. Right. I'm not taking anything further until I spend the night with you. I'm not taking anything further until I have a nightcap rather. I'm not taking anything further until we see what that looked like. Nah. So that's a easy left. Easy no, easy pass. Okay? So sexual pressure early. Secondly is avoiding basic questions. All right. Now, of course, there's a litmus test of basic questions that you can ask, but these are three that I think are really easy. Why are you on this app? What are you looking for? Why didn't your last relationship work? Okay. If I didn't tell you before, I'm going to tell you now. Get your journals. You want to take some notes. All right. Why are you on this app? What are you looking for? Why didn't your last relationship work? If they've been in a relationship, if they haven't, again, well, I'm curious. Why haven't you been in a relationship? What about now is the difference maker for you to start engaging in relationships? It's a great place to start. These are not therapeutic questions. These are not interview questions. These are not, forcing somebody, cornering somebody. All right. We're really just engaging in intentional questions to stay curious. Okay. And then inconsistent communication is something that we highlighted as well. And we recognize too that every delayed response does not mean there's inconsistent communication, right? We have to be mindful of the expectations that we're placing on people early on when we're in dating stages. First of all, you don't know them, you're getting to know them. Okay, so there should not necessarily be too heavy of expectation for this person to respond to your text messages fast in the moment that you respond and match to them. Okay. Now, there were some great questions yesterday, like, oh, well, how long should we wait? All the things. And I think it just really depends. And that's why it comes back to the conversation of capacity. Okay. Your boy, as I've shared before throughout the duration of this stream and this series, stepping back into the dating, even on dating apps myself. Okay. So, like, unmatching is something that's pretty simple, right? I just recently measured a couple of the matches and the conversations that were started. And, I realized, man, it was like, June 17th or something like that when the message first started. And the messages have really been sparsed out, haven't really been too consistent in that. And we're now in July 8th. I'm okay. And keep moving. Okay. But it's all based off of discretion and what you have capacity for. Okay. We don't necessarily want to continue to conflate, delayed responses to mean that they don't care, they're not interested, and all the things. And we have to be careful with the assumptions of, well, then why are they on a dating app if they don't have time to talk? That's very true to some extent. And people have lives, y'all. People have lives. There's so many other different meanings that we could attribute to delayed responses than just the simple fact that they may not be interested. They're lying. They're being fake. Okay. We just got to slow down and not give so much legs to those kind of stories that run rampant in our minds. Okay. Um, are dating apps even worth it? I think they can be. Leah. That's why we're doing this series to give ourselves the opportunity to be able to engage them in the best ways. Because I think the real question is, I don't even necessarily think the question is, are dating apps even worth it? I think the question is genuinely, for at least from this angle and lens, do I trust myself enough to make the healthy decisions in dating apps or dating in general? Because like I think dating apps have their benefits, right? I definitely think it does. Like the amount of time it takes for you to meet somebody in person, IRL, first, right? Obviously, in a natural environment, going to the grocery store, going to the mall, going to a public event, a local event in your local church, and then allowing that to be something that creates, something further. Okay. I'm not saying that that can't happen. Of course, that can happen. That's always an availability. But for a lot of you, that's not your reality because that's not what you do. You don't go out. You're not conversing with people. You're not putting yourself in positions to be met, to be seen. Okay. You walk around with earbuds in your ear 24/7 and you look unapproachable. So like that's not even your reality. For a lot of people, dating apps make sense because this is a beginning space. We're at a little bit of a distance. We're at a place where we get to know each other, beginning introductions with profiles, all the things. And you might be able to kind of qualify people who make sense a little bit faster. And online dating being that kind of move, it can be helpful. So I do think there are plenty of aspects of dating apps that does make it worth it. I'm not getting paid by a soul to say this. This is just somebody that has been on dating apps and has experienced dating apps and beyond. And believe it or not, regardless of whether or not the match turned into a date or something that was progressed, there was an actual connection in anywhere. Like I have no really bad like experiences on dating apps. Like I genuinely don't. I don't have any bad experiences because I genuinely trust my ability to choose from what I'm seeing and be honest about it. Like I haven't really met someone that's just thrown me off so bad. I was like, dating apps are trash, women are trash, all the things. Like I just nah, mm-mm. They don't get that type of power, and one person doesn't get to define the entire pool of a dating app either, with so many users on so many different directions. So yeah, I think there's benefit to it. It's just I think the question becomes, do I trust myself to be able to make a healthy decision with what I see and make that decision consistently? So I hope that made sense. And if there's more questions, keep asking. Um, so we talked about inconsistent communication and what that can be measured by expectations, right? What are your expectations, and are they legit? Are they legit? Especially to somebody that you don't know, that you're just now meeting and that you just matched with. And as we've said before, dating apps should be treated as introductory, not as something that is automatic. Like, oh, I matched. So this is supposed to be my next boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. No, you don't know them. You still don't know them. You got a little bit of them from a profile with limited character space. Let's not act like we know all that there is to know about this person. There can still be room for conversation, still be room for connection. So let's allow that to be there without rushing to so many different stages. Okay. So here's the fourth red flag, and we're going to go through these quick because we got yellow and green to go through. Okay. So the fourth red flag is love bombing. Okay. Love bombing. And love bombing is not necessarily to the extent of like, um, okay, so wait, I can't show, appreciation, love, admiration. I can't like somebody. I can't like texting or talking to somebody. Not necessarily, right? We're not going that direction, okay? Because obviously, if you like someone, you enjoy the conversation. Yes, you're gonna text them, you're gonna call them, you're gonna talk to them, okay? We're not going that direction. There's a difference between showing love to someone you care for, okay, and then constantly showering somebody with overwhelming uh, excitement, okay, as a means to gain control. And that's kind of the centerpiece to love bombing in some direction. Okay, obviously there's pieces to it. I'm not necessarily saying that's the only defining, description of love bombing. But however, when I think of love bombing, I think of it in this direction of showering you or showering someone with compliments emotionally and physically. Okay, there is an immense desire to want to move fast. What does moving fast look like tangibly? Okay, we're talking about they're already calling you wifey and they don't know you. They're already calling you husband and they don't know you. Okay, they're over promising from extreme positions and definitely under delivering. So they're definitely getting your emotions and your excitement to a peak. Okay, they're just showering you with all these compliments, how beautiful you are, how amazing you are. There's nothing you can do wrong. They're showering you with so many compliments. And to people, and this is so interesting because to people who are not used to that, that is easily conflated, not just as interest, but commitment. So if you're not used to speaking that kind of life over yourself, or you're around people who can speak that kind of encouragement to you, you can easily encounter somebody who begins to see all these things about you that you may not see about yourself. And the more and more that they say it, you may conflict that to mean, oh, or conflate that rather to mean, oh, so now I must be next wifey. This must be it. This must be the one. This is the person that I prayed for. They're answering all these prayers. And in reality, there is legitimately no consistency, no action, no direction behind all of the words that they're screaming and showering you with from back to 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 back text messages with all these emojis with nothing but all this, what seems to be love, but is really infatuation. Okay. And so we have to be aware of that tendency. Okay. Not just to perhaps be a love bomber, but also to receive and be on the receiving end of said love bombing. Okay. Showering you with compliments emotionally and physically, wanting to move fast, over promising extremely in the beginning. They just don't know you. Okay. And so one of the things that we're looking at as we're engaging with people and as we begin to have conversations is, not just necessarily, okay, if they share some compliments and all of a sudden that's a red flag. No, 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 no. Well, that's not what we're saying. Obviously, that can be a part of the conversation as you engage with somebody, but it's more so, okay, is this all that they're talking about though? Is this all that they have to say? Is how beautiful you are and how much of wifey you have written all over you? Okay. Or how much husband material you have all over you. Okay. Now all of a sudden, she's ready. She's saying all the right things and is ready to do all these things. It's just all words. She's ready to move where you are. She's ready to get married today with you right now. She's ready to do it all. I think we just have to be able to slow down. Okay. And that's a easy red flag, right? We don't know each other. So like for you to be so quick to get to this place in the first day, maybe the first couple days, the first week, all right, we're probably dealing with a lot of attachment and infatuation, not legitimate love. Okay, not something that is built with intimacy, that is built with longevity. Okay, so obviously, if they share compliments and all those things, that's not bad. But if all the conversation, the entire conversation is centered on how beautiful you are and all these things, then that is something that we want to slow down and pay attention to and realize, this might not be the move because we don't know each other and yet you're promising all these things verbatim with your words. All right. So we want to pay attention to that. Then we want to talk about vague intentions. Okay. Now, vague intentions, again, especially for those of you who are saying, hey, I'm looking for long term relationships. I'm looking for long term life partner. I'm looking for somebody that I'm ready to date to marry. Okay. I'm actually being intentional about that journey. Then vague intentions is not something that you should give time and attention to. Just chilling, going with the flow, just meeting new people. Okay, now there are people who are legitimately getting on dating apps to do that. And if that's where you are, that's where you are. People who are where we are differently, we look at that and we just don't necessarily engage with it. Okay, as somebody who is looking for a life partner, I'm not interested in necessarily just chilling. Now, that's not to say that I'm not being present enough in the connection to see where it goes, to being open to it, taking my time with it. But just chilling, going with the flow, and just meeting new people doesn't necessarily give a verbatim expression that you're looking to take something to the next level, right? That you're being intentional with your conversations and questions, your time. Okay. That's just saying you're just here and there's not really a level of seriousness that you're taking to this. And so we acknowledge that and we don't also force this person to be where we are. We just keep it moving. All right. So vague intentions is something that you want to be mindful of for those of you who are wanting to date seriously. If you're in a position where you're like, well, maybe I am just chilling though. I am just going with the flow. I am just wanting to use this to meet new people. Then obviously you want to be intentional about stating that. Okay. You do not present yourself in a manner where you're saying you're just chilling and just meeting new people. And then in your bio, you say you also want somebody that's loving and caring. And you also want somebody who wants to give you all their time and attention. And you also want somebody who gives you gifts and all these things because there's so much confusion. in these spaces with so many of you with all these profiles and all these dating apps and things like that, where you will say, I'm just meeting new people. I'm not taking anything seriously. But then at the same time, have the nerve to put demands at the end of your bio for the type of person you want to match with you that has less to do with friendship, chilling vibes, as you say, and has more to do with, okay, wait, you're actually looking for something here. That's confusing. And if you see that, swipe left. Since I can't control what other people do, I'm just gonna control what I can control, and that's what who I match with. That's who I message. That's who I connect with. So vague intentions for those of you who are serious in these spaces. ugh, okay, I'm not here for the just chilling, just here for the vibes. Okay, if that's what you want to do, go to your ice cream. Go get some ice cream. Okay, go somewhere else. Go to a bowling alley. Main event. I don't know. Go to your local event shop, or connect with people locally. All right. Then there's a couple other that I want you to pay attention to. Okay, one is still attached to an ex. Okay, so there's ways that you can learn about this when you're connecting with people. One is always asking about relational history. For some people, they won't even. It's not even something based off of a question asked. They'll just start talking about it. They'll introduce themselves with their wounds, right? And so how they'll do it is they'll simply start a conversation, and it'll be all left field. And it may not necessarily be the first message, but it'll be in the first few conversations you might have with them. Like, oh, I remember when my ex did that. I remember when I did that with my ex. I remember when I, if I hear a lot of conversation in the midst of us getting to know each other and you're constantly bringing up your ex, this probably isn't something that screams we can move forward. There's still some clinging there. There's still some things you're probably healing from there, especially to people who are using dating apps. This is how you're going to weed out people who are using dating apps and they're just getting out of relationships. So that's why I tell you one of the questions that you should ask, basic questions, right? Why didn't your last relationship work? Maybe another basic question is, when was your last relationship, or how long was your latest relationship? Because that can give you an opportunity to listen to the timelines and responses and be like, okay, all right. So you just got out of a relationship 3 months ago. It was a 2-year relationship. And now this turns into a conversation where maybe we start dipping into the direction of, well, maybe based off of what I'm listening to and how they're talking and how they're engaging, I don't necessarily think I'm ready to take on, right, engaging with somebody who is still trying to overcome previous relationships. And perhaps this is their means of doing it, and I don't want to be a part of that. So we keep it moving. Again, this has less to do with controlling other people. This has more to do with giving us the power to be able to trust ourselves in our decision making with what we see. If we ask enough of the right questions and we just let people talk, y'all, people will talk. And people will tell on themselves and people will expose themselves, just like you will when you're asked questions too. So like it's not so much about trying to play a game of gotcha, right? We're just being present. We're being present and we're listening to the conversation that's being said and that's being had. So if they're still attached to their ex, they keep bringing up their ex in all the conversations and all the responses. They keep referring back to their ex. They keep referring to, I'm good. Okay. That doesn't necessarily sound like something that's healthy, especially in the direction of where you are wanting to go as someone who is moving healthily, securely, and wanting to move intentionally for long-term relationship. Okay. The next one is kind of a little bit more of a challenging one. All right. But I say this is a good one. Spiritual performance with no fruit. Okay. Spiritual performance with no fruit. Now, this isn't necessarily a saying that you need to uh, be all in this person's spiritual growth journey in business and become a Pharisee, right? We're not trying to clock watch, all right, people's behaviors and motives and directions when it comes to their relationship and their faith. People are where they are, okay? And I do think you should look for conversations even early on about what this person is passionate about, what they care for. Okay, obviously in the first couple conversations you learn a lot about someone. So what do they talk about a lot? What do they engage with a lot? Okay, do they talk about their faith at all? Is this something that they're engaged with, that they're regularly engaged with? Okay, but spiritual performance with no fruit is just simply saying things like, well, I want somebody who can quote scripture. I want somebody who knows scripture and knows the Lord and has a relationship with the Lord. But if we get into conversation and there isn't a whole lot of not necessarily saying we have to go so deep into the nuance and breakdowns, but there isn't any examples of this person's walk with God, what God maybe is talking to them about or unpacking with them, or not even necessarily just sharing prayers and all those things. We don't want to go so deep so soon. Okay, that's where that the early stages of dating isn't prepared for all that. Okay, but maybe when we're talking about spiritual performance, right? You sound really good when you're quoting scripture and you got them all in your bios, all right? But when I listen to your content, or when I take a look at just maybe your track record of content, when I take a look at context clues around your social media, it doesn't necessarily support that, right? You're the type of person that have a scripture in your bio, right? But you got half naked pictures all over your page. I'm not I'm not necessarily saying that you can't get what you want posting that way. I'm also saying too, like, is there any level of consistency here? Okay. And so we want to be mindful of that. The spiritual performance with no fruit is definitely something that's going to take a little bit more time to reveal itself. So I definitely want to say it like that. It's going to take for some of you, it's going to take a little bit more time to reveal. So it may not necessarily be something that you see in the first conversation or the first few conversations, but you do want to keep observant. Okay. Okay, this person says that they believe in Jesus. This person says that they are growing in this area of their life and their relationship with God. All right, cool. How do they talk? How do they handle difficult conversations? Okay, is peace, love, joy, patience? Is this something that they value, and it's not just something they say they value? You actually can see it through different small areas of their life, conversations you share with them, places they're going, things they're doing. Okay, when we're looking for fruit, we're looking for behavior. Okay, specifically in a passage of scripture, Jesus is referring to fruit as behavior. Okay, just as you know someone by their actions, you'll know them by their fruit. Okay, I don't want to necessarily misquote that. I'm gonna bring it up here. By their fruits. I'm gonna look this up here. Uh, Matthew 7 verse 15 through 20, just as like a quick reference. All right, because y'all know, as part of being your faith-based relationship coach, I gotta bring just a little tad of this, okay, just to give you an example. Where do we get this idea that fruit is actions? Jesus kind of has this little conversation in Matthew 7, and this is verse 15 through 20. And he's talking in the context of false preachers. All right, so false prophets, rather, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit, that is, by the way they act. Okay? Can you pick grapes from the thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce a good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, you can also identify people by their actions. All right. So when we say they have no fruit, what are their actions? What are their behaviors? What are their habits? Okay. What are their habits? What are their disciplines? Okay. What are the things that they're doing? Is what they're saying also aligned with what they're doing? Right. So we're paying attention to all of that. And some of that may take some time to show, but we're just being attentive. Okay. Don't feel like you're wasting your time if you're getting to know somebody, and by the third, fourth, fifth conversation you may have with them, maybe by the second or third date you have with them, you start picking up on things that you're like, it's kind of making me want to change my mind here because I don't really know what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing. There's a lot of inconsistencies. When you're healing and you're moving securely, you're open to changing your mind. That doesn't make you fake. That makes you very aware and honest with what your values are communicating to you based off what you're seeing in action with somebody. Okay, so you're not being two-faced, you're not being fake, you're not lacking integrity. If your values when you first met them were like, yeah, this makes sense, and then as you got to continue to know them and you started paying attention more to their behaviors, you started paying attention more to their disciplines, you started paying attention more to what they do and don't do. Okay, how they show up in private, how they show up in other areas. You were like, nah, I don't know. This is kind of weird. Then we can allow that to be a decision that we change our mind on. And that is okay. That is okay. All right. So that kind of explains the spiritual performance with no fruit. Then we have two more: anger when boundaries are named. So if you're setting boundaries and you're saying, "Hey, I'm not really interested in talking past 11 p.m." and his response or her response is now all of a sudden you're lame, right? And then not in a joking fashion, right? Because there's a difference if somebody's joking and, you know, playful and being playful and all those things. That's a little bit different, but we know the difference in tones. Okay. If you don't, that's another conversation. We can talk about that. Okay. But, you know, they're pushy, they're forceful, they're blowing up your phone. Can't take no for an answer. For some of them, they require an explanation. Okay. So pay attention to when you say no. And I'm not even necessarily going to talk and use the language of boundaries because there's a lot of deeper things that we can get into regarding that. But pay attention to people when you tell them no. Like, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go here. I'm not coming. Whatever it is, like I'm not coming over. Obviously, okay. When you say no, we're not going to call at this time because I'm not going to get too deep in the conversation late at night. Okay. When you say no, how do they respond? That's probably going to be your biggest application and something to be aware of. And if they respond graciously, if they respond welcomely, if they respond patiently, if they respond without needing you to give them an explanation as to why you said no, that that's a good sign. That doesn't necessarily mean, okay, now they passed the test, they passed with flying colors, and this should be somebody that I connect with, but it does give good feedback. All right. This is something that I can consider a green flag. Okay. So we're going to pay attention to when those things are named and when you say no. How do they respond? Then finally, okay, again, these are not limited to these. These are not red flags these are not the only red flags, all right? There probably are plenty of more, but just a few. Negative introductions. Y'all, please, for those of you who are on these dating apps, stop using negative introductions as a means to get somebody's attention. You are not going to find what you're looking for if every bio you have on every dating app is centered on why dating is trash, why marriage is a contract, and why men aren't anything and women aren't anything. You look desperate, you look hurt, and you look like you need to sit down and do some healing work. It's amazing how so many people want to engage in someone securely as if they're supposed to be the ones to pick up the broken pieces they never caused. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's not happening. If you want to make relationships and connections, you must show yourself to be friendly. Showing yourself to be friendly, yes, taking up curiosities about this person, taking up curiosities about this person's interests, taking up curiosities about what this person is looking for. All of that is great. But don't lead with negativity. Stop leading with all of this trash you're hearing online about how bad dating is and telling people to convince you of something as a prompt. It's like, no. Why? No. If I have to send a message and convince you why a group of certain people aren't bad, aren't trash, and this that, and the third, it's like I don't know exactly where your mind frame is when it comes to dating and the beliefs you carry. Because I'm not just answering a prompt just to be funny. I'm actually going up against a belief you've rehearsed that if I can't like it, if God can't even get your attention on these things, I don't know what you expect me to do. I don't know what you expect me to do. I'm not in the business of trying to convince nobody of nothing. I'm being authentic, okay? I'm showing up as I am, being honest and all the things and let the chips fall where they may. But let's not stick with these things of negative introductions. Everybody has heard enough of how bad the dating pool is. There's no reason why you should have a dissertation in your bio about how bad dating is. There's no reason why you should have in any area of your bio and your profile of why men are trash, women are trash, sprinkle, sprinkle, twinkle, twinkle, 50-50, red pill, all this. Come on. No need. And if that's the only way you know how to communicate, then you need to get off these dating apps. You need to go back to the first few episodes we recorded of this series, and you need to do some applicability and sitting down and healing. Better yet, you need to send me a message so we can work together to get you together. Because there's nothing worse than carrying old wounds. There's nothing worse than carrying old wounds from and trying to cause other people who had nothing to do with how you got hurt to heal you. Now, don't hear that as if you can't be in relationships and relationships can't serve as a place of safety to heal. Okay, you probably have heard and seen so many pages, so many posts of people like, "Oh, okay, so healthy relationships don't necessarily mean two people are perfect individuals. Like, there's no greater love than somebody who is able to love you through your stages of survival and help you heal and all those things." I am not saying that that can't be possible. That is very possible, very possible, right? That's why we don't talk a lot about things like, oh, well, our job is to, rescue and heal people. Okay. My job is not to get you to a place of being perfect so that you cannot, you can't date until you reach this certain pinnacle. No, no, no. Right. All those things are true. All those things are very real. Okay. And, and, and let's not bring that level of survival that you're in, thinking that the answer is to find it through meeting somebody else to bring you out of it. Don't think the answer is, okay, well, I'm going to get out of this when I find the perfect one, when I find the right one. Like, if you're not doing anything in your now to deal with the tendencies you are aware of that is having you in survival mode and using survival language, then I don't know what you expect partnering with somebody is going to do for you when you're unwilling to show up for yourself in some of the smallest ways to get ahead of the game. So, this is to all of you who look to use your anxious attachment as a means to get other people to bend backwards towards your direction. If you're unwilling to heal the wounds that are reflecting in you that is leading to anxious attachment spilling out, I don't know what you expect a mate, a partner, a husband to do for you when you're unwilling to show up for you. So let's not try to bring all this stuff and all this baggage and then put it in the hands of somebody else as if it's their sole responsibility to bring you out of what they never put you in. Can people help you heal? 1,000%. Can the right relationships help you heal? 1,000%. 1,000% they can. But let's not actually put that sole onus on them as if you can't heal until you're in a relationship. There are some things that will get exposed in you and can only be exposed in you when you're in a relationship compared to your singleness. But that doesn't mean that you still can't make progress in your singleness and other areas of your life where these same wounds are showing up just in different masks, in different faces, in different places. All of it goes hand in hand. Okay. But I have a strong disdain for a lot of people getting on these apps. And it's not just dating apps, it's Instagram, it's TikTok. You first open your app and all you hear is all this negative trash on somebody's experience on dating because they keep picking the wrong person. And if we just build the level of self-trust to be able to recognize when somebody is who they aren't, or somebody isn't who they say they are, rather, I think we'll have a lot better opportunities. And that starts with us looking to develop a sense of security in who we are, in our decision making, trusting our decision making, and moving and using discernment, being honest about what we see. All right. I am no way, shape, or form going to swipe right and match on an account, and your bio is nothing but negativity on dating, on men, on marriage. I don't know what you expect. It sounds like you're looking for attention, and you're not going to get it here. Have a seat. Let's do some intentional healing work. Send me a message, DM me secure. We can get some things started so you can stop carrying these old wounds and expecting people who had nothing to do with it to be the sole reason why you get your help and healing. At some point, you got to show up for yourself too. Okay? So those are the red flags. Let me know if that makes sense. Put one in the chat if you've listened throughout that whole entire spill and this is making sense. Okay. Because we're going to move on to the yellow flags and green flags. And then we're going to move forward. Okay. What's up? Sasanach? I'm not saying that right. Good to see you. All right. So this is making sense. All right. Now let's move forward. Let's move forward to yellow flags. All right. And we're going to. Okay, good. No, I'm just checking the chats here. All right. So now let's move to the yellow flags. And the. Now, granted, it might be playing it too. Oh, no, that's right. Okay, good. All right. And what I'll do. Oh, no, it's already there. Okay. So now the yellow flags. So when we look at red flags are telling us, hey, we just need to stop. Let's stop. Okay. If you look at a street light, okay, a stop light, red means stop, yellow means slow down, green means go. All right. But in this aspect, okay, green is going to represent us to continue to observe. This is giving us the green light to continue connecting. Doesn't mean it's a green light to go to the marriage, go to altar, to make this official. This is just, hey, this is a green light that gives us an indication that it is okay to continue to explore what this is. All right. A yellow light is telling us to move with caution. All right. We're going to move with caution. It's not a yes and it's not a no. It's not a I don't know, but we're moving cautiously. Okay. And so, how we move cautiously is by making sure that our expectations are in a healthy place. So, some of these that I'm going to explain to you can fall within the yellow flag. All right. And it's something that gives us information to be like, okay, I want to slow down. I want to be cautious. I don't want to cling too fast. I don't want to cling to outcomes. I don't want to attribute certain meanings and stories to this. I don't want to make this out to mean anything else than what it genuinely is. Let's just slow down, okay? So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. All right. And most of these you'll probably get off red. Okay. So, number one, we've kind of already talked about this and how we don't want to conflate it in the red flag category because it's more so of a yellow flag. Slow replies. Okay. Slow replies. Now, again, this is not to say that they need to be fast. They need to text back every 2 minutes. Right. But for most of us, especially those of us who are genuinely out here, who are building something, creating something, okay, we got a life to live, a lot of responsibilities to take care of. We're not just on dating apps 24/7. We're most certainly not near our phone to respond and have conversations all throughout the day. That doesn't mean that we can't set time aside to respond and to send a message. But again, these are things are warranted later on in the relationship. Y'all, you got to stop expecting people to give you heads up and to move with this entitlement as if you are owed a text about how busy the day is going to be and you just met them. And no, this does not mean if he wanted to, he would. You can apply that later seasons in the relationship where you guys actually have a foundation set. There has been expressed mutual interest. There's been a date or two. We are now being more exclusive and intentional with that. Hey, guess what? This is where you can actually apply some of these things. Where we can now have conversations on what can we expect further that is different in this stage of the connection with communication. But let's not move with these expectations that this person is just supposed to respond to your every text message so fast, so soon. You just met them. You just met them. You still don't know them. You're still in the beginning phases. They are not designed. They are not supposed to be the center of your day, just like you aren't supposed to be theirs. Y'all both are still got individual lives living, and we're just at stages where we're slowly looking at what it could look like to integrate each other into our lives. But that does not mean we need to go full fledged, fast, and in a hurry in the moment. Okay, so a yellow flag can be slow replies, but in the direction of, hey, okay, maybe we're talking every couple days. All right, that's a slow. That's a slow, right? That's a let's slow down. Let's not cling. Let's not make this mean something. Let's not make this mean everything. Okay, let's not move with these entitled expectations. And let's also not make them to be out, hey, this is my girl or this is somebody I'm talking to or putting all these labels and titles because we're just still in the process of getting to know each other. Matter yet, a lot of women actually move with this pace, especially when it comes to a form of safety from online dating. Okay, a form of safety that can be expressed through just getting to know one another as we slowly chat online. Okay, a form of safety, right? I'm not oversharing, I'm not doing too much, I'm not moving too fast. I'm also not moving too slow or we're dragging our feet where I'm only sending a response a week, right? It's just more so taking our time. Okay, so yellow flags can be slow replies, but in the manner of, this conversation is happening every other few days. All right. Another yellow flag is recently out of a relationship. Okay, now I know we put in the last one in the red flag, still talking about your ex. So that's a little bit different. All right, if somebody you're engaging with is still talking about their ex heavily within relationships, it's probably not something that they really are ready to take a next step towards. And that's something that you are going to have to make the decision on because we can't expect them to see it because if they did, they probably wouldn't be on the apps, right? But recently out of a relationship is a yellow flag because now this is drawing more questions. Oh, well, how you say recently, how recent? Okay. And depending on the level of the relationship, the length of the relationship, right? What have you been doing to heal? Um, if you say you were in a 2 year relationship and you've been out of it now for 4 months, okay, that's ooh, all right. That's a little bit of a pause right there, but this should draw more questions. Well, what have you been doing to heal? Um, and then obviously you listen to some of those responses. Now, again, this doesn't have to turn into a therapeutic session, but somebody asking you what have you been doing to heal is not a therapy session invitation. This is just being curious. If you feel that's too much for you to answer and to give an answer to, then you probably shouldn't be out here. Take a back seat. Okay. If somebody asking you certain questions like your interests, your hobbies, okay. If somebody asking you questions like what are some wins or some recent things that you've experienced and things that you've been healing through, working on yourself through, and you're feeling like that's too deep of questions, you don't need to be entertaining anybody. You don't need to be entertaining anybody. That's more of a red flag. I can't even ask you about your interests without you like, oh, that's too much. Slow down. Come on now. I thought we talked about not having deep questions. That's not even a deep question, which is telling me that you're still wounded by some things and you need to go on about your day. But if you're recently out of a relationship, okay, now we get to say, okay, well, how long is that recent? How long is that recency? And what have you been doing to heal through that? And if their answer is, well, I haven't really been doing a whole lot. And I kind of thought if I got on dating apps, I would get over them sooner. That needs to be enough information for you to be like, okay, this is now in a red flag category, and I probably don't want to continue this. Like this doesn't have capacity to go beyond what we're talking about in this chat. And be okay with that. Learn to say no. That's what security gives you the privilege to do. Shout out to Brooke in the chat. She asked a question: how do I deal with friends that constantly talk about hooking up with people? It's the guys that talk about women constantly. Um, so I think there's a few thoughts here. I know for me, there was a period in my life where I can reflect on conversations like that happening a lot around me. And I had to get to the point where it was less about trying to change the group and it had a lot more to deal with, well, I'm just going to be able to be honest about what I'm willing to put myself around, the environments I'm willing to put myself around. That doesn't mean I can't be friends with them, but I'm just not going to engage with those kind of conversations. For instance, I play basketball with friends at work. Okay. Yeah, so I think in those types of situations, there's a couple ways you can go about it. One is not necessarily involving yourself in those kind of conversations. And when people ask you, like I've grown and continue to grow into being more of a direct individual. So like if people are like noticing that and um and like they're noticing that And then I'm like, they're like, oh yeah, I'm just noticing you ain't even saying nothing. Like, you good? I'm like, yeah, I just don't engage with that type of level of conversation that y'all are having. Like, I'm just not even going to engage in it because it's just not my cup of tea. And like, oh, we're you too good for us now. It's like, nah, I just don't think the type of conversations y'all are having are productive and helpful. And I'm assuming, again, looking at your profile, because you are a woman, right? So obviously, hearing that makes you feel some type of way, right? Because you're in a different place. And so it's like, no. Yeah, I just, as a woman, I'm not, again, as a woman speaking in your shoes, like, yeah, no, um, that's not okay. Like, I don't feel safe talking about that. And hearing y'all talk about women this way doesn't make me feel comfortable, doesn't make me feel safe, and doesn't make me want to engage in these kind of conversations. Right now, number two, that's kind of more of a direct approach. I also think number two, in the instance of you playing basketball, like, it's less about trying to control them. I think it's more about being okay with obviously not allowing that kind of conversation to get to you so deep and personally. And I think that actually starts with detaching from the different meanings you might kind of attribute to them having that conversation. Now, this kind of goes into deeper psychological realms, but again, a lot of times we're quick to attach different meanings to things the more they happen. And so um, I think it's helpful to look at that and go, man, what is the story I'm telling myself based off what I'm hearing from them? Whether that story is about them as a group of friends, as is there a story I'm creating in general about men that's making me feel more turned off towards men in any kind of way? Um, and I think it's just worth pressing in and being curious about that too. Um, and then I think thirdly, dealing with it, if it gets to the point where it's extremely uncomfortable, where it's like you don't even feel like you can play basketball with them anymore. I mean, I'm sure there's other gyms and places you can go where you can continue to get your workout in, and they're not talking about women in that way. I go to a gym locally, again, not to say that we have the same experiences, because we don't. And I definitely understand how much more difficult your experiences can be. So I definitely don't want to insinuate that it's easier or anything of that sort. It's difficult. Um, I know for me, going into places and gyms, like I might hear it and overhear it, but I don't involve myself in it. And I also recognize too, like, it has nothing to do with me. They're not talking to me. They're not talking about me. And even though they may not see anything wrong with it, I know where I stand on these situations, and I'm not here to correct or change or force anybody to believe what I believe, see things the way I see them, and I can let go of it. And if it gets to the point where it's like I walk into the gym and that's all everybody's all talking about, and it's just that annoying to me, you know, I'm not against changing gyms, and going to hoop with some other people who, you know, might not necessarily talk about those things as deeply. But also, too, I do think, if you got to the point where you are going in so many different directions, this is the third gym, this is the fourth gym I've transitioned to, then it's more like, okay, I definitely would probably park more at the second question. Like, what are the meanings and stories we're attributing to what we're hearing that is really causing us to feel the way we feel? Um, and that's not to make what they're saying right, because it doesn't. Depending on the direction that they talk about with the relationships and with the women, like, it doesn't make it right. But we also know that we can't control other people. We can only control what we can control. And so I know for me, there was a time where I was like, I have to, like, there was a time, and I share this story all the time. This was in early stages of or not high school, college. And, all of the homies, like, we've all graduated, we're all on our own things. And we get online regularly still at that time. And, I was in a position and transition in my life where I was trying to be more attentive to what I was listening to, what I was saying, what I was giving room to. And I said in the party one night, I was like, hey, y'all, because they like to make a lot of sexual jokes across the board, like just flying off the handle. And at that time, I was just trying to be more intentional about what I was saying and what I was listening to. So I said, hey, y'all, like, trust me, I tell you, I love y'all boys. I am not here to change any of y'all. But man, I'm just being more attentive into uh, the kind of conversations that I'm putting myself around and the kind of conversations I entertain. My best friend in the chat, he goes, I know exactly where you're going with this. Don't do it. And I was like, yep, you know. Because we had plenty of conversations around that. And again, I was just like, hey, so, obviously I'm not somebody that's trying to change y'all, but if these conversations continue to happen in the direction that they're happening, if y'all see me leave the party, just don't act surprised. Know why. Like I'm just not engaging in those type of conversations, uh, as fluidly. And I think from that day on, I stopped getting in party invites uh, as frequently. Um, I'm pretty sure the only person I started playing games with consistently at that time was my homie, my best friend. Um, and we kept moving. We kept it moving, and there was no beef. I had no issues with none of those guys. I mean, that's just where they were. I was just growing in different lanes of maturity, where I was like, yeah, I get it, joshing around, having jokes like that, cool. But it's like I was in a position at the time in my life where I'm just maturing differently. And so that came with different levels of conversation and some things that I just didn't want to keep entertaining. And so, I said my piece, kept it moving. And, they stopped inviting me places and all the things. I mean, specifically on the gaming, because I didn't go anywhere. But it was all good. It was all love. I had no issues with them. I said my piece, and they respected it enough to be like, well, we know he probably won't be in the party long, so we just won't invite him. And that's cool. So I think that, you know, plays a role in it too. Um, and so I think that's kind of where I'm at with it, and I hope that makes sense. Because I know, especially for your position and where you are in your shoes, I can see how that's a difficult environment to be in. Being a woman and hearing a group of guys talking down on women, or maybe whatever that conversation may actually look like. And so, but there are ways to navigate it without feeling like you have to control the entire environment, or that the conversations have to go in the way that you see fit. Even if that means, if it happens enough, you might have to remove yourself. And that's okay. That's okay. Um, and, if they're close friends, or people that you consider, relatively good friends with, then, don't hesitate to have that conversation with them too. I know that's not necessarily a first option for a lot of people because of the nervousness, the fear of rejection. What are they going to think of me? But, I think this is a test to be able to overcome that as well. So if you have more questions on that, please let me know. But I hope that was helpful, and to anyone else that was listening in on that as well. All right, so let's talk about some more yellow flags. Okay. Um, Recently out of a relationship, this opens up the door for us to ask more questions, to see how recent, and to listen to responses. Unclear dating goals or uncertainty. Okay, so I see a lot of profiles that say they're figuring out their dating goals. If you're in the same realm, okay, maybe that's a place of alignment for you. But again, as someone that is intentional about where I'm going, I know what I want, I know what I'm looking for, I know who I'm looking for. I'm not necessarily moving with unclear dating goals. Okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a full on stop, but that also doesn't mean it's a full on go, continue to engage. Okay. If you were to put this in process of like a profile, okay, obviously when you look at a dating profile, you're going to see an abundance of things on that profile that can either intrigue you to send a response. Okay. You see a little bit more of their personality. You see some pictures. You see what they look like. Maybe there's a voice note on that profile, so you get to listen to how they sound, all the things, right? All these things that are giving you further indications to either continue with maybe matching, swiping right, or something you see that maybe makes you go automatic no. Okay. If we put this into the form of the dating profile, and every area of that profile is an invitation to either go deeper with the match or to continue moving forward without a match, when you see unclear dating goals, it's not necessarily meaning, oh, that's an automatic no. Okay. But that also doesn't mean it's an automatic swipe right or yes. It's just, okay, maybe I need to see more on their profile. So if it's, I'm figuring out my dating goals, I don't know, okay, let me go a little bit further in their profile. What other things have they included in their profile that could give me some information on not just maybe why, but maybe there's some other things that I can get to know about this person that might still keep me a little bit interested to see what this looks like moving forward. Okay, for me, I know a deal breaker. I'm not interested in nobody who is not wanting monogamy. Okay, I'm not interested in nobody who does not want monogamy. So in your profile, your stuff reads figuring out dating goals and like you don't know, or you're figuring out your preference, whether you want monogamy or polygamy or whatever. Yeah, no, that to me that's a deal breaker. So I'm gonna automatically swipe left. Okay, because that just doesn't align with my values. How am I determining it to be a swipe left? Because it doesn't align with my values. I would be stepping out of my values if I were to swipe right. Okay. And so, yeah, that's a yellow flag. That should be something that causes you to slow down. All right. This is not an automatic yes. It's not maybe for sometimes. It may not be an automatic no. I need to learn more. And if the profile doesn't even give you enough to learn more, then you swipe left. If it gives you a little bit more and maybe you swipe right, maybe a conversation comes out of it, this should start up some conversation. Okay. What about your dating goals do you feel unclear? What exactly are you looking for? And if there's like, I don't know what I'm looking for, I don't like, okay, then that's probably a good sign that we probably shouldn't continue this process together, right? We probably shouldn't continue engaging together if you don't know what you're looking for, right? I know what I'm looking for. And I'm not going to sit here and wait around for you to come to a conclusion after months and months of us talking that you no longer know what you're looking for or it's not here. I'm not interested in going on a scavenger hunt to figure out what you want. If you don't know what you want, chances are you're in the wrong place. And chances are, if you don't know what you want relationally, you probably don't know what you want in various other areas of your life too. And that's something that you need to deal with and sit with instead of convincing yourself that you're a great candidate to be chosen, but yeah, you don't even know what you want. Okay. I'm going to go through these last ones pretty quickly and then we're going to go to the green flags. Sudip says how to know if she likes you after 3 conversations. Ask her. Let's stop looking and reading in between the lines. You can simply ask her. That's number one. Number two is also, I think, no, not moving with the intention of things needing to move so fast. Be in the present and enjoy the conversations as they happen, as often as they happen. Listen, man, a woman, a girl, one of the ways to know that she enjoys your time, your conversation, your company, or she wants more of it is when she isn't like she's interested in talking to you. She wants to keep talking to you. So like the conversations continue. Okay, the conversations build. She's not against going out and meeting in person and going other places. Okay, a woman's time is very valuable. Everybody's time is very valuable, but a woman who is intentional, her time is very valuable. So if she's lending you some of that time, whether that's through messaging, conversation, continuous conversation, that's a good sign. I'm not saying that means that it's about to go all the way, but it's a good sign. But I also think there's healthiness in just being present and enjoying the conversations as they happen and not forcing it, rushing it, hurrying it. Shout out to S, who also asked in the TikTok chat my thoughts on avoidance. Yeah, I think my thoughts on avoidance is well, we know an avoidant is someone who is pushing away people. Thank you for the daily heart, me Lucy. I appreciate your time. Avoidance are people who are pushing away, right? That's their first instinct. I don't want people to get too close to me because in the event that they do, they're probably going to walk away. So I'm afraid. Fear is what drives anxious and avoidant attachment. The fear of the avoidant is that people get too close and that then I fear being disappointed. I fear being left and abandoned. I fear that I'm going to mess this up before it gets good. So I'm just going to go ahead and push this away. Okay. It's a form of self-sabotaging in a lot of different ways, a lot of different directions that you can take with that, but just maybe a beginning step to that. So my thoughts on avoidance is number one, okay, is that if you know that you are an avoidant, I do think just like if you know you're an anxiously attached, one, you need to send me a message with secure because we need to get you involved in this program to help you navigate that in a healthy way at a nervous system modality. So that way you're not just listening to other tips and tricks, thinking that if you just apply it, it's going to change your life. When you have an identity that you've created based off what you've done repetitively, that says otherwise. Number two, is that avoidance. Okay. I don't necessarily tell people that they should date an avoidant. most people fall in the category of anxious or avoidant. Most people fall more so maybe in the anxious realm, just because of how high anxiety really is. But I don't necessarily suggest that people date avoidance. But I do think whether you're anxious or avoidant, the caveat to this is if you're aware of your avoidant tendencies and attachment, just like if you're aware of your anxious avoidant or anxious tendencies and attachments. Okay, if you're aware of those things and you're intentionally doing the work to heal through those things, that's different. But if you're somebody who is just simply aware of it and you have no idea or desire to change those things, you're part of the problem. Um, dealing with ghosting, dealing with running away, dealing with all those things. Listen, that is a nightmare in and of itself. And I do think somebody who has those tendencies and wants to date, it is important to learn how to emotionally regulate. And I think you really want to lock in on building that before you get into situations of dating and experiencing other people. Like I genuinely believe that is your responsibility. Can avoidance date and find love? Yes. Can anxious people date and find love? Yes. And if both of y'all are in the same situation where you're both avoidance and both are anxious, then God help you. But hey, listen, it can work. I guess, if it just like two people who are healthy and secure can make it work, two people who are willingly wanting to be in their dysfunction can make something work too. If they're both dysfunctional, it can happen. But I'm saying this to say, because a lot of people aren't trying to be that. They don't know they are, or they just don't know how to heal that. There's ways to do that intentionally. My thing is that we should be intentional about that. We shouldn't necessarily try to force other people to be the caveat or savior to that healing, especially when it comes to avoiding attachment. There's a lot of stories, beliefs, nervous system modalities, fight or flight that's present in those things, shutting down, running away, ghosting, all the things. And we really need to deal with that intentionally so that way the self sabotaging tendencies don't engage or ruin a relationship that actually makes sense for you. And those are my thoughts to begin with. But if you want more, I have a playlist on my channel, on my TikTok channel, attachment styles. Okay, so be sure to check that out because I actually cover a lot of attachment style perspectives. Yes, from a biblical lens, also from a scientific psychological lens. Okay, so you want to check that out. I think that'll be really helpful for you. Okay, hope that made sense. Um, let's move forward. All right, taking a breather there. Another yellow flag is giving out number quickly. All right, giving out your number quickly. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to mean a whole lot. All right, I am a proponent believer that in dating, we want to get out the app as fast as possible. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that as soon as you match with somebody, that means you need to give them their number. I think there's a process. Okay, stay in the app a little bit, have some conversation. If you like what you're hearing, now we can advance to numbers. And just because you exchange numbers doesn't mean that it's supposed to be at the altar. Doesn't mean that it's supposed to go to marriage. Doesn't mean it's supposed to be long term. Okay, you can easily give out your number to somebody, have conversation with them, whether that's briefly or that's often, and then learn more about them, and then be like, I'm okay. And you can delete the number. It's not that hard. Okay. Um, and it's not that you're, being desperate and all the things and other meanings that will attach to it. Okay. But I do think that should be something that causes you to slow down a little bit. Okay. Somebody who gives you out their number quickly. Um, I've had my experiences where someone is trying to get to know more and they're just giving the number because they're not on the app often, but we haven't had a lot of like we haven't had nowhere near enough conversation on the app. And so that's a cautious flag for me. Okay. Now, again, depending on if this is somebody that you do want to get to know more of and you can, move it off the app, cool. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that something is wrong. Um, I did that with that particular individual and individuals, and then later learned this isn't really something that I really want to build and invest into. So I'll see my way out, and I let that be known. Okay, we're leading, we're having those conversations, and I let that be known. Okay, um, but yeah, I think giving out your number quickly can mean a couple things. One, someone's not on there often. Two, they're getting straight to the point, and that's okay. That means they're ready and they're intentional about their time. And so if you match with them, they're very, 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 very selective with who they match and who they swipe right on. So you might have found a good one. All right. So be prepared for that. But also for some people, it's just a means to get off the app. Okay. I've actually seen people move very creatively on these social media apps or profile apps where they'll put their numbers in the prompts and things like that. I think that is so funny. Creative because it's very like there's prompts and then they'll have parts of their number like in it. I thought that was so creative. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to send a message. I just like, oh, that's creative. For somebody who maybe is wanting to get things off the app fast, or literally you created a dating profile and you're not on there. Again, if you're creating a dating profile just to tell people that you're not on there much, you probably don't need to be on a dating profile. Like you probably just need to get rid of it. Okay, like that just defeats the whole purpose. It really does. It defeats the whole purpose. But again, just it's cautious. Slow down. It's not an immediate yes. It's not immediate no. If somebody gives out their number quickly and you're in the chat and it wasn't an opening message, but you shared a few messages and they're like, "Hey, send me a message here." It's like, hey, I would like to actually spend a little bit more time getting to know each other in this chat before we actually move to numbers. Is that okay? You know? Yeah. And Lucy says, I hate when I get a message like that. I just unmatched. Yeah. And there's a lot of people, and I think it's a matter of safety, right? There's some people who are legitimately ready, and that's a different conversation. But then there are some people who definitely have a lot of questions, and so it's a safety concern. And I respect that too, right? So in the event that this is somebody that you actually desire to want to connect with or want to learn more of, they send a message soon. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to mean an automatic unmatch. I think especially if it's somebody that you're trying to want to get to know more of, and there's a little bit there that makes you say, I want to learn a little bit more. They just gave their number too soon. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I appreciate you sending your number. I'll use it when I'm ready. I would prefer for us to stay in this chat a little longer just to keep talking. And if we're feeling that, I'll definitely send you a message. How does that sound? And if there's no response to that, then I guess you have your answer. Okay. And if there is a response to that and they're like, oh, I get you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I definitely don't mind that. Then cool. The conversation continues. We just got to learn how to communicate and say that in a way that's welcoming, right? Hey, I appreciate you sending your number. I'm actually interested in keeping it in this chat. And when the time is right, I'll get to using that. Is that okay? And keep moving from there. And so, yeah, I think that's something that's a cautious flag that we want to pay attention to. The next one is lack of thoughtful responses. Okay, no inquiry uh, to you or your experiences. Okay, so this is a cautious yellow flag. If you're matching with somebody and they're answering questions that you're asking, but they do not care enough to inquire about you, your interests, what you have on your profile, even something as small as a "how about you," then hey, that can be a yellow flag, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a narcissist and they're a gaslighter, manipulator, and all the different things and therapizing languages y'all love to throw around. Good God Almighty, doesn't mean that. Okay, for some people, it's just like they literally just don't have good communication skills. All right. For some people, it's just, it's a variety of different things. But here's the main thing. If you see that and you're taking note of that, you know, chances are it's like, okay, maybe this isn't something that I want to be involved in because I don't want to have to tell somebody to ask me how I want, or maybe even me going in and just sharing some of my stuff. Like, I don't want to have to tell somebody to do that. Okay. So then that's a clear no. Hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate the conversation. I'm going to keep looking. Leave it alone at that. Unmatch. Move on. Okay. Maybe if you eventually just start sharing some of your own stuff, right? Maybe you start answering the question yourself in response to it and then see how they go and build off of it. Maybe they didn't think about asking the question about what about you? What are your thoughts to this? But instead, you inserted some of that in your own response and then that built a conversation. You can give that a try too. But most of the time, listen, somebody who's lacking thoughtful responses, doesn't care enough to get to learn you or your experiences, good chances that's probably, if you're seeing a little bit of it here, you're going to see more of it later. So, we can let that go. All right. Um, Now, here's the next one, yellow flag. Wants a date and number in the first 5 minutes of matching. Now, again, there's intentionality, and then there's a difference between being intentional and being hurried. If I'm being intentional with this and they're saying a date and a number in the first 5 minutes of matching, okay, perhaps you have some of the best profiles that's out here. that people want to engage in and all the things and vice versa. And I guess that's possible. That's very unlikely though. So most of you who get a number and a date in the first 5 minutes of matching, okay, I want you to be able to pull that back. Again, if it's something that you engage in and it's something you want to get to know more of, then we're going to peel that back a little bit. I appreciate the offer and the date, and I think this is something that we can consider, but I want to spend some time talking to you first. Is that okay? I want to spend some time texting, conversing, and maybe have a FaceTime. Is that okay? Okay. Some people are so excited that they get ahead of themselves. And when you mention that, they be like, you know what? You're so right. I was so excited to match with you. I was ready. And this is actually a better. I appreciate that. Doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's a complete door shut. Okay. Now, for those of you who are looking at that and you're going, wow, yeah, I don't even know you. You're already giving me your number and all this kind of stuff. I'm good. I guess maybe to an extent you don't really fully like what you saw. You really don't fully like the profile that you matched with, and that's okay too. But if it really is something that you want to build on and you want to be curious enough to build on, pull it back and redirect the conversation. Hey, I appreciate the number. I appreciate the date. This is something that's definitely on the table. I would really love to continue our conversation just to get to know each other a little bit before we go to those next stages. Can we do that? A nice redirect. Lucy asked a good question. What's a good response to someone who is giving a dry conversation? Um, so when you say dry conversation, are you simply saying that they're one word responses, or when dry conversation you mean they're not asking you questions in return? Because those are two different things. If there's one word responses, one word answers, one line sentences, not a whole lot of depth in going. Number one, again, dating men is a little bit different, right? The one word responses and not asking questions. Okay, so you got to remember dating men is a little bit different. You're probably not going to come across a lot of men off rip who are wanting to be so emotionally in depth. So don't come in expecting him to be as emotionally available as you or more, because most men don't necessarily come off the rip moving that way. That doesn't mean you won't come across men that way, because there are men out there that can do that, but not all men. Okay. And so we do want to be careful with that expectation. That's why we talked about before in this series the psychology of men and women. Women often move emotional investment first. So, yes, women are more than likely going to want to dive into some of the more deeper conversations, some of the more curious, inquisitive conversations. And that's okay. Right. And you most certainly will and can find someone who will match that energy. But for the men who don't, because that's not familiar territory for them, um, I think you want to just start by asking lighter questions or engaging in lighter ways. So, inquiring them about things that they find most interest in. Okay. Um, Tell me something about why you're here, why you're on the app, right? Or what are some of your what's some of your biggest wins in 2026 so far? Or insert the year that you're in and the time of month that you connect with them. What's a highlight you're trying to build on in the summer? Okay, something along those lines. I mean, there's a lot of questions you can move with that, but when it comes to one word responses, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Again, one word responses are typically ones where it's like I'm good. I'm not really interested in like one word responses. That just gives me enough information to be like it's just a lack of substance here. And whether that's because they're nervous, they're not ready for a conversation, that can also be a part of it too. That's why it's like people warm up to you. It's not often you come across somebody who is just ready to go off rip. Okay, so we have to just be careful of those expectations. That's why we said earlier on we want to be mindful of those. Not everybody is just coming off the gate hot. Okay, some people have to take some time to warm up to you, and taking time to warm up to you is just, you know, they dipping in toes before they put their whole foot. Before they put their whole leg in the water, right? They're just dabbling and taking their time, and we want to be okay with that. But one word responses are really hard to deal with, and so for that reason, if you're seeing one word responses, it's like, okay, I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the match, or I appreciate the message, but I'm gonna keep looking, you know. And that's just something. And maybe if you want to be direct, hey, I'm curious, like why one word responses? I definitely want to hear more of what you have to say. And it doesn't have to be something that's approachable or something that's like confronting. It's more like, hey, I'm just so curious. Like, why only one word responses? I'm really interested in, or you don't have to say really. I'm curious why one word responses because I'm interested in hearing more of what you have to say. It sounds like there's a chance you might have more to say on it, and I'm curious on what that is. I'm just a fan of being direct. If it's somebody that I genuinely want to get to know, because a lot of people don't necessarily talk. Not everybody's a chatty patty or a yapper or whatever we want to call it. All right, and that's okay. That is completely okay. But that also doesn't mean that we can't grow into learning how to converse with each other. And because we're new, we're strangers, you might run into people that are just lighter in conversation. I think for me, it's very easy for me to carry a conversation with anybody. So I'm at a place where it's like it's having good conversation isn't something that I'm looking for. That's a sign that we can actually go. Because I can have good conversation with anybody because I just love to talk. That's what I do for a living. So it's like, but I do think to anybody who isn't that, there's ways to kind of really draw it out of them slowly without forcing it. And it's just taking more curiosities. But again, one word responses. If you don't want to ask that question directly because you just already aren't filling the profile and now they're responding that way, feel free to unmatch. Keep looking. Um, and go from there. Does that make sense? I hope that does. I hope that was practical as well. The next few, I'm going to run through these really quickly. Yellow flags, once a date and number in the first 5 minutes of matching. We talked about that. Poor profile effort. Okay. No, only pictures, no prompts, no details, no tags, repetitive answers to prompts, repetitive pictures. You might see the same picture on the same profile numerous of times, if not the entirety of the profile. Maybe they only have one picture on their profile. Okay. No pictures of face or maybe full body. Okay. It's a lot of people out here who are good at angles, good at convincing you of one thing when it's really something else because of the lack of confidence in their body. Okay. This goes for men and women, lack of confidence, self esteem, whatever that is. And so, again, this is a yellow flag. Let's slow down. This doesn't mean we should go all the way. This doesn't mean this needs to be all this. Okay. Doesn't mean it needs to be all that. Okay. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. Okay. Let's pay attention to the yellow flag and let's slow down. Okay. I am not somebody who is going to be off rip, just jump into profiles that only have one photo, no pictures, no prompts. Okay. I've seen situations where profiles are set up and they don't even answer the prompt. They just got a period in every section. That's an automatic no for me. I don't even, because for me, I'm looking for more than just what you look like. Throw some personality. We had a whole conversation talking about the setup of a great profile. I am not here to just look at pictures and make a decision. Include something. Include something. We gotta have a starting place at some point. And again, because a lot of people out here playing, catfishing. Okay. I encourage you guys to check out bios. Do not be in such a hurry and so lazy that you cannot read a bio. Please. Like, you be swiping right on profiles and don't even know that this person isn't even who they said they were. There's a lot of times, especially on my end on dating apps, man, and it's like, again, I'm not there. I am not in. This is not me. It's a lot of like, transgenders and stuff like that, man. You got to be careful, bruh. You got to be careful because you mess around and swipe right on the wrong profile, and you, heck no, heck no. All right, so it's just like read bios, man. Read them. Read them. They don't need to be a whole novel, but read the descriptions, read the prompts, slow down long enough to engage in the fullness of the profile. Okay. And obviously with the pictures, you don't, maybe you don't even have to go far because the pictures up there don't even look that great. Obviously, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So, you keep it looking. But fam, like, you know, poor profile effort is definitely a yellow flag. All right. No values listed anywhere is another yellow flag. Okay. That can open up some conversation if you see something or enough of something that's like they don't have it listed on their profile, but there is some things listed on their profile enough that gets me interested to send a message, reach out, match, swipe right. Okay. And maybe your values conversation can come up in the match, like as you guys have conversations if you match. All right. But yeah, that is a yellow flag. Okay. Somebody who's legitimately looking for something is probably going to have somewhere a value of theirs listed. If it's a tag, if it's a prompt, okay. If it's even in a picture, you can learn a lot about values within pictures, okay. Whether that's how they dress, the settings they're in, okay. All right. What they're drinking, okay. That's very important that you can learn a lot about values in those directions too. So if you're somebody who doesn't want someone who's in a bar and their profile picture and their profile has one or more pictures of them in bars, well, that probably is a value that's misaligned. And if bars are something that is on a high priority list where you're like, I don't want nobody that's drinking, I don't want nobody that's around bars, I don't want nobody in those settings, and that's a very high priority of value for you, then that probably means that's not the profile you need to swipe right on. Okay. The idea of seeing what happens is the one too. Okay. I just want to see what happens. I'm going with the flow, kind of similar to the red flags. The yellow, I include the seeing what happens in the yellow flag because maybe that's where you are. And I also recognize too that a part of being present and living abundantly is not hurrying to destinations and finish lines. So you can most certainly be intentional and still keep your heart open to a prospect and say, I'm interested to see what happens and not force this to be something in the end. That doesn't mean you're lacking intentionality. You're being intentional with questions and conversations. You're observant. You're taking notes. You're listening. You're paying attention. Being in that place of saying, see what happens to somebody that's a legitimate candidate doesn't mean that you're not intentional. Because I'm moving in abundance. I'm moving in a manner of taking it day by day, being in the present, valuing what's around me. Okay. So I'm not hurrying. And that's a big, big, big deal. I'm not hurrying. We do not need to be married tomorrow. We do not need to be a thing next week. Okay. I can stay open to the conversations. And then finally, another yellow flag. Again, these are not limited to. These require, okay, well, I'll say it like this. I guess that was the last one. This note here is a bullet point, but it's supposed to be a final note. All of these things require slowing down, not automatic rejection. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an automatic no. It also doesn't mean an automatic yes. Okay. So we're just paying attention to that and we're weighing our options. And again, how do we determine that? Our values. That's why we started this whole conversation talking about values, alignment, honesty, and capacity. If you know those things and you're able to continue adjusting those things, then determining what's a red, yellow, and green flag for you beyond what we're talking about here becomes easier and easier. All right. And then finally, green flags. All right. I'm going to be really, really quick on these because these are pretty simple. Green flags, you have clarity. Okay. You're not left in the dark. You know what this person's intentions are. You know where this person wants to go. You know the directions of this person. Okay. They're very communicative of that. And they're very aware of what you're looking for. So that way they're not misleading you into any other obscurity or direction that you don't want to be in. Clarity in communication and in action. Consistency. Okay. There's great consistency in timing and messaging and connection and desire to connect. Okay. There's consistency in action and behavior. All right. They're not talking to you for a week and then disappearing for 2 weeks and then coming back on the fourth week of the month to talk back to you again. Okay. Consistency also doesn't mean that you're talking every day once you got the number. Now, if you are there in a genuine, authentic connection, and obviously this isn't us needing to play around, act like we're busy. I'm going to set a timer so I don't text her in enough time so I don't seem thirsty. I'm going to set a timer so I don't text him so I don't seem thirsty. Y'all, nah, bump all that. If you like them and you're enjoying the conversation, they sent you a message and your phone is in your hand and you're not busy and you want to respond, respond. You have my full permission. Respond. Enjoy the conversation. If you are wanting to talk to them more and you're like, I want to call them and set up a FaceTime, and you do that, do it. Okay, I'm not in the business of playing games, acting like you're busy. She won't respect you if you're texting back too fast. God forbid. Okay, now that doesn't mean that we're around our phones 24/7. That doesn't mean we need to be. Okay, but if I'm around and I have my phone on me and I see your message and I have the time to send the message, I'm going to send the message. Why not? Right? That's freedom. That's freedom. Okay. So there's some consistency in behavior, in words, alignment, all the things. Okay. Then there's accountability. Accountability is huge. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're always apologizing for something, because accountability isn't just on the hands of apologizing to something. Okay. Taking accountability for experiences, past experiences. When you start asking about past relationships, maybe you might ask a question like, do you recognize your role in how the relationship ended the way it did? Is there anything that you feel you can take accountability for, that you had to learn, to grow through, and to change to create healthier outcomes now? Okay, that can get into some deeper conversation, but you listen to what they're taking accountability for. If every time you're talking to somebody, it's always a them thing, it's never a me thing, it's never a what I didn't do, it's never a maybe I need to take a look in the mirror, sit with that, consider that, reflect on this, think through that. If it's always a them and it's pushing out, you can consider that a huge yellow flag, red flag type of deal. Okay? So there's accountability. That's a massive green flag. And accountability doesn't mean I just get to say, oh, well, I'm sorry for that, but you did. This ain't about you. This ain't about me. This ain't about us. You know, what I didn't do that gave you permission to not do what you needed to do. This ain't about that. Taking accountability is me just simply leading with the energy of, you know what, that's on me. And this has nothing to do with what you didn't do. I just recognize I didn't do what I said I was supposed to do. I said I was going to call you. I didn't. That's my apologies. How can I make it up? I said I was going to engage and send a message and follow up, and we were going to have this date. I had to cancel. Listen, that's my apologies. My day got ahead of me, and I got behind, lost track of time. But listen, I want to make it up to you. How is Friday? How does Friday, say at 7 p.m. work? Okay. Accountability goes a long way. All right. And if you want to be a green flag, you need to practice accountability too. It don't need to be a one-way street. All right. Then you have respect for boundaries. Okay. When something is mentioned, a no is given, it's honored. All right. It's received. This person is not challenged. Their identity is not challenged. They don't feel lack. They don't feel emptiness. It's there. Okay. They're cool. Emotional steadiness. All right. We can learn a lot about somebody through when things fall apart and things don't work out the way that they thought. How do they handle emotional steadiness? How do they handle their emotions? This happens through conversation. Obviously, if you stick around with them long enough, life will present options and opportunities for you to see them. Okay. But where are you in your emotional steadiness? You can control your emotional thoughts. You can control your emotional reactions. You can control all those things. What's up, Ines? Maria, you're all right. The replay is on YouTube. Check it out. Be sure to subscribe. Okay. So emotional steadiness is there. That's very important. Okay. Curiosity and humility go hand in hand. That's a massive green flag. When they're asking questions about you and inquisitive about what you got going on, not just your profile, but as conversations are built, they're taking note of it. They're observant of it. They're asking questions that maybe weren't even the center of the conversation or topic, but they listened, they were attentive, and they responded with curiosity there. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a green flag. Observant of the small things and responding to that. That's really dope. Really dope. I have been it's definitely been something that's refreshing to have conversations with people, and then they're picking up on small things I wasn't even focused on, yet they were listening intently, and they were like, oh, I noticed you said this, tell me a little bit more about that. Oh snap, dang, I didn't realize I said that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Great conversation. Okay. Humility, massive. Okay, we're not talking about fake humility or anything of that sort, but we're just talking about humility in the sense of this person, is humble about their work, humble about what they do, humble about how they go about things. Okay, you're not hearing them brag about how amazing they are, how much money they got. Okay, can't nobody touch me. I'm untouchable. I'm on top of the world. I'm better than most. All right, at least directly in conversation. Okay. There's some really good humility there. All right. You can also look for things like gentleness, calmness, All right. Lack of reactivity. So they're not living in reactions to things. Okay. And then obviously a biggest one is faith live, not just advertise. Now, of course, these things, a lot of these things that you're talking about with yellow flags and green flags, the biggest thing that you want to be able to invite for those things to be determined, of course, more as you determine them, is time for some of them. Okay. A lot of these things aren't going to be determined from one conversation, the initial conversation you have when you match, or even a bio. The bio, the profiles, you're only getting a glimpse of how somebody is best describing themselves from the best things about themselves. So it's not so much supposed to be taken as the gospel, as, oh, this is who they are. As you get to learn more about them, ask questions, go on dates, have conversations, more will be revealed. Be open to that. Okay. Have an open heart to that. Let's not hurry to different destinations. And more importantly, let's not necessarily cling to everything that a profile may express to you, because it's just a beginning. Just like a match is a beginning, and there's checkpoints between the match conversations, the date, the FaceTime date, the introductory date, all these things that you might build up. There's checkpoints. All right. And we're just engaging in various beginnings to building what can be an awesome relationship that we're just observing and we're being in the present in. Okay. So some of these things you're not going to be able to determine off rip, but the more you talk to them, the more you engage with them, the more conversation you have with them, the more you're going to be able to see. And that's okay. All right. So a red flag says stop, a yellow flag says slow down, and a green flag doesn't say go to marriage, make it official. This is my man, my man, my man, my man. This is my girl, my girl, my girl, my girl, wifey and hubby. A green flag says keep observing. Okay. A green flag says keep observing. Keep observing. Okay. And so the biggest question that you're going to have to take away from this entire conversation, all right, is, are you interpreting your flags through wisdom, fear, or fantasy? Okay. Are you interpreting what you're seeing and the flags that you're determining through fear, fantasy, or wisdom? If you're interpreting it through fear, then you're probably quicker to claim everything as a red flag instead of using nuance to what you see. If fear is the lens in which you're viewing this through, okay, you're probably oftentimes living in extreme hurry. You're probably looking for the first wrong thing about this person instead of what is right or healthy about this person, about this account, about this message, about this opportunity. If you're moving in fear, okay, there's probably a lot of clinginess happening where you're investing into the wrong stories about what could go wrong instead of what could possibly go right. What is available? If you're moving through fantasy, all right, you're actually, this is probably the most simplest way I can describe this to you. If you're operating and interpreting your flags, green, red, or yellow, through fantasy, okay, you're hanging on to the potential of this person more than what is about this person. In other words, you're clinging more to the version of them you've created in your head off of the limited things you've seen of them versus how they have shown themselves to be in words and action. When you're interpreting these things through fantasy, you're not in the present. You're clinging to what could be or what you hope can be. And potential, everyone has it. Potential isn't the issue. Active potential versus non-active potential is the issue. If it's active potential, we're seeing genuine transition, change, growth, wins, gains. We're seeing somebody progress. But when there's no active potential, then that means it's all talk. And so for a lot of you, you're coming into these apps and we're looking at it through the lens of fantasy. This person looks good, and this is the type of person I've always envisioned bringing home to. And so I'm clinging to the potential based off of what I read in their bio, based off of the personality, the way they made me laugh, the way they made me cheese and smile, and they were flirtatious, and they were this, that, and the third. So we were going off of fantasy and potential, and we kept clinging to that version of them that we created versus the version of them that's showing up. That isn't consistent, that isn't intentional, that isn't moving with direction. Okay. So when you're moving through fantasy, you're ignoring what is. So you always have to peel it back a little bit and ask myself, even though I want this to be something, even though I see this could be something, what is happening? What is happening? And what is happening is, man, we're not talking too consistently. We're not talking, too regularly. Haven't had a date and it's been a month of us knowing each other, or at least being aware of each other. So chances are this may not necessarily actually be something that is serious enough to move forward with, and I need to keep looking. Instead of attaching to so much potential and emotional investment that I gave so early, that now I'm forcing myself to bring something out of this when there's nothing to create out of it. Okay. But when you're interpreting this through wisdom, you're interpreting this with an open heart through the lens of abundance, through a values and alignment. Okay. Through values and alignment, you are making this decision with an open heart, patience, presence, and abundance. With an open heart, patience, presence, and abundance. Okay. So we'll end this conversation here. Okay. My biggest encouragement to you is to manage your expectations, choose from abundance, remain in the present, and not cling to outcomes or potential. Just because it feels good doesn't mean it's for you. And this is where discernment, this is where present, this is where all those things come into play for us to engage slowly with the profiles we're seeing, and more importantly, how we're presenting ourselves regarding connections and beginnings to what could be as we meet and match with others. All right. Does this make sense? Ooh, y'all got another 2 hour one out of me. All right. Does this make sense? I hope it does. Put a one in the chat if this was helpful. Everybody who's watching across all platforms, first and foremost, I appreciate you a ton. Okay. I appreciate you a ton for sticking with me through all this conversation. Um, I hope this was helpful. I hope you got a lot out of this. Okay. The replay will be up on YouTube. Okay. And we'll have an opportunity to build on this next time. All right. Next conversation should be going down tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Central. All right. And we'll be carrying the next part. All right. This will be part, 12? Something along those lines. I don't know. I'm losing track. But hopefully these conversations are something that's helpful for you to listen into and pay attention to as you're building your profiles, engaging in dating, whether you're using dating apps or you're just dating outside of it. Okay. Shout out to Leah in the chat. Oh, y'all, my back. Oh my goodness. Uh Shout out to Leah in the chat who says, if it's long distance relationship, what is acceptable length of time before meeting? I think that's something that you and your person in long distance would need to decide on. I would hate to give like an overarching like umbrella of expectation because it's different for other people depending on your schedules, depending on when you're available. Okay, long distance relationships. Again, long distance can range from being 2 hours away from each other, or I mean, I don't know if it's 2 hours away. Maybe, uh, yeah, I mean, maybe 2.5, 3 hours away to your states away, right? And so I think that just really depends on the length of the distance. Okay, Florida to Cali. Okay, yeah. So we talking coast to coast, right? So, um, yeah, I really think that's really dependent on the both of you in terms of your schedules, in terms of when you're available, and I think that's something that you should have a conversation on with each other, um, in terms of what that looks like to narrow down a date and time on when you guys should connect. Um, Now, I will say, you know, I don't think it's feasible, especially if we're trying to build something intentional. I don't think it's feasible to be dating for a year and not see each other. Um, I don't think it's feasible to even be dating for 6 months and not see each other. So maybe that's a great framework start regarding long distance relationships. You know, because, but again, it's just a matter of planning. It's a matter of what's available, who's available, okay, and how that aligns with you guys' schedules. Like we've talked about before, long distance can work. It's just a matter of intentionality with those levels of conversation. So I would say, yeah, have that conversation with them, um, and get a feel of what that looks like. When can I see you? I'm gonna be honest, like especially with where I'm at now. Uh, for me personally, obviously, we've had our conversations on long distance. Me personally, I'm not in a position where I'm dating long distance just because I know I don't have the capacity for it. Not because I can't handle it. It's just like I know what comes with it. Eventually, we're going to want to see each other. Whether you come to where I'm at, I go to where she's at. And so, obviously, you got to fit the bill for what that looks like financially and all the things that are needed to be planned for that. So, those things come into play for me personally. And so, um, because I know that those are expectations, right? That's part of what should always be considered when you're doing long distance relationships, um, and what that looks like to spend time with each other. But again, I know if I did, and I think I treat it just like any other relationship. If I were in long distance relationship, I definitely wouldn't plan on going 6 months without seeing her. Um, I would definitely want to fit some regular time of trips together in some way, going to where she's at. And then obviously, if push came to shove, flying her out to where I'm at. That would be my preference. Now, is that how that would go down? I don't know. I've never been in that, so I can't say that. However, that's why I say I think it's important to have that conversation. I hope that makes sense. Um, Connect together and see what that looks like, and just stay curious. You know, um, absolutely, absolutely, and stay creative with what you guys are building through the phone, FaceTime, calls, all the things. That's definitely a means to building the relationship in the best of ways as well. Okay. So, uh, any more questions? Any more questions? If not, I've been on here long enough. I gotta go. Um, and so I appreciate you guys a ton. Again, across the board. Shout out to you over on Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, pretty chocolate skin. We're going live regularly on 1 p.m. Central Time. I know it's typically a rough time. Everybody's at work. That's why I record them and they're up on YouTube for the stream replays. So if you missed it, be sure to check it out there on YouTube. I encourage every last one of you to go to the top of my page. If you're on social media, TikTok, Instagram, go to the top of my page, click that link, and you'll actually be able to receive a free relational diagnostic once you hit enter relationship portal. That is going to be your biggest next step to not just really figuring out what your struggles are relationally with truth. Okay. All right. Not just figuring out what is your biggest struggles in truth, but being able to have a plan of what those things look like moving forward. Okay. So you want to be able to check that out. Link is in the bio in both TikTok and Instagram. In YouTube, if you're watching this replay, click the link down in the description below. Becoming-secure.com is where you want to be. And we will get you started there as well. Be sure to, over on socials, if you're interested in joining my secure program designed to help you go from anxious or avoidant attachment to secure attachment in a healthy way through nervous system modalities so that you don't just act like you're secure, but you truly live in your security. Be sure to send me a message with secure in the DMs, and you will actually go through a quick qualifying question list, okay, to get you where you need to be, and obviously get you perhaps going on that program. The first week is free. All right, people are getting wins in there. I want you to be a part of that as well. Also, if you can't do any of that, be sure to follow for more as we continue navigating through our healing, doing relationships the right way, which starts with us doing the healing work on ourselves first and dating healthily, becoming secure, all the things. Subscribe over on YouTube. I appreciate you a ton. Follow for more on Instagram, TikTok, and everywhere else. And I'm excited to continue this conversation tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Central Time. All right. And until then, be easy and be breezy. Peace.